Today, we will uncover the mysteries hidden within the human subconscious, the secrets of the third eye. Have you ever heard that right at the center of our forehead lies a mysterious energy center? It not only symbolizes the gateway to the spiritual world, but also holds incredible wisdom and power. In this video, we'll delve into the power of the third eye and its pivotal role in human spirituality and intellect, using two historical figures as our starting points. First, let's look at Indian mathematical genius Srimavasa Ramanujan. Coming from a poor background without formal education, his mathematical talent defied conventional understanding. Ramanujan didn't rely on books or guidance from others. Instead, he accessed inspiration in a mysterious way, directly through his third eye. Whenever he pondered a mathematical problem, his eyes would naturally roll upward, focusing on a spot between his eyebrows, the point that yoga describes as the third eye. Professor Hardy was astonished by Ramanujan's extraordinary ability, yet even the greatest mathematicians couldn't explain this phenomenon. The third eye served as a gateway to wisdom and universal mysteries, allowing Ramanujan to directly perceive mathematical truths beyond ordinary comprehension. Next, we'll explore the extraordinary experiences of Edgar CAYCE. This American prophet and healer could diagnose and even cure illnesses while in a trance state. In his unconscious state, CAYCE's eyes would also roll upward toward the third eye. During each diagnosis, he seemed to connect with a realm beyond ordinary perception, as if he were accessing a hidden space of wisdom through the third eye, obtaining profound knowledge about diseases and treatments. CAYCE's case shows the third eye's incredible role in healing and spiritual awakening. Through the stories of these two people, we can glimpse the true meaning of the third eye. It is not just an energy point on the forehead, but also a pathway to higher dimensional worlds. When opened, the third eye grants unprecedented insight and awareness, potentially altering our understanding and control of the material world. In ancient India, the TILAK, a mark on the forehead, was believed to be associated with the third eye. Placing it accurately could help individuals remember the position of the third eye and activate its latent spiritual power. Next, we'll explore in detail how the third eye is used in yoga and spiritual practices, and why it's called the AJNA chakra. This center not only governs our willpower, but also determines whether we can transcend the material world to reach a higher spiritual realm. Let's dive into this ancient and mysterious knowledge together, to understand how the third eye affects our lives, how to open it through proper practices, and how to embark on the path of self-realization. Through this video, perhaps you too can find the key to unlocking your third eye and glimpsing the truth hidden behind the universe.
Chapter 3. The Secret of the Third Eye.
Before I tell you about the vermilion or sandal paste mark, I would like to tell you about two events. It will make things easier for you to understand. Both of them are historical facts. In the 1888, a person named Ramanujan was born in a poor Brahmin family in South India. He became a very famous mathematician. He could not study much, but still his genius in mathematics was unique. Many well-educated mathematicians have earned a name because of their training and guidance from others for a number of years. But Ramanujan was not even a matriculate and had no training or guidance from anyone. With great difficulty he got a clerical job, but very soon news spread that he had an amazing talent in mathematics. Someone suggested that he write a letter to the famous mathematician, Professor Hardy, of Cambridge University. He was the most eminent mathematician of those days. He didn't write a letter, but solved two theorems of geometry and sent them to Professor Hardy. Hardy was astonished to receive them and could not believe that someone so young could solve such theorems. He immediately wrote back to Ramanujan and invited him to England. When Hardy met him for the first time, he felt that he was like a child before Ramanujan in the field of mathematics. The genius and capabilities of Ramanujan were such that they could not be due to mental powers, because the intellect moves very slowly, thinking takes time. But Ramanujan didn't take any time in responding to Hardy's questions. No sooner was the problem written down on the blackboard or put to him verbally than Ramanujan began to reply, without any time gap for thinking. It was very difficult for great mathematicians to understand how it happened. A problem which would take about 6 hours for an eminent mathematician to solve, and then too he was not sure about being right, Ramanujan solved instantaneously, unerringly. It proved that Ramanujan was not replying through the medium of the mind. He was not very learned, he had actually failed in matriculation, there was no other sign of intellectual ability, but in connection with mathematics he was superhuman. Something happened that was beyond the human mind. He died when he was 36 because of tuberculosis. When he was in hospital, Hardy, along with 2 or 3 other mathematician friends, went to see him. As it happened, he parked his car in such a place so that Ramanujan could see its number plate. When Hardy went into Ramanujan's room, he told Hardy that his number plate was unique, it had 4 special aspects to it. After that, Ramanujan died. Hardy took 6 months to understand what Ramanujan meant, but he could only discover 3 of the 4 aspects. On his death, he left a will that research work on that number should continue, to find out the 4th aspect. Because Ramanujan had said there was a 4th, there had to be. 22 years after Hardy's death, the 4th was discovered. Ramanujan was right. Whenever he began to look into any mathematical problem, something began to happen in the middle space between his 2 eyebrows. Both his eyeballs turned upwards, centering on that middle space. In yoga, that space is described as the third eye spot. It is called the third eye because if that eye becomes activated, it is possible to see events and scenes of some different world in their entirety. It is like looking out of your house through a small hole in the door, and suddenly, when the door opens, you see the whole sky. There is a space between the 2 eyebrows where there is a small aperture which sometimes opens, as in the case of Ramanujan. His eyes rose to his third eye while solving a problem. Neither Hardy could understand this phenomenon, nor would other Western mathematicians ever understand it in the future. I will tell you about another event in connection with the vermilion mark, so that you will be able to understand its relationship to the third eye. Edgar Cayce died in 1945. 40 years before that, in 1905, he fell sick, became unconscious, and remained in a coma for 3 days. The doctors had lost all hope and said that they could not find any way to bring him back to consciousness. They thought that his unconsciousness was so deep that perhaps he would never come out of it. All medicines were tried, but there were no signs of his regaining consciousness. On the evening of the 3rd day, the doctors said that they could not do anything more and that within 4 to 6 hours he would die, or if he lived, he would be mad, which would be worse than death, because as time passed the delicate veins and cells of his brain were disintegrating. But Cayce suddenly started speaking even though he was in a coma. The doctors couldn't believe it. Cayce's body was unconscious, but he was speaking. He said that he had fallen from a tree, that his backbone was injured, and that was why he was unconscious. He also said that if he was not treated within 6 hours, his brain would be affected and he would die. He suggested some herbal medicine which he should be given to drink and said that he then should recover within 12 hours. The names of the herbs which he requested were not likely to have been known to Edgar Cayce. And at first the doctors thought what he was saying was just part of his madness because the substances he had suggested were not known to cure a condition such as his. But because Cayce had specifically mentioned them, they thought they should try them. Those substances were searched for and given to Cayce. He fully recovered within 12 hours. After he became conscious and when the incident was related to him, Cayce could not remember suggesting any such medicine. He neither knew the names of the medicines nor recognized them. But this event in Edgar Cayce's life was the beginning of a rare happening. Edgar Cayce became an expert in suggesting medicines for incurable diseases. He cured about 30,000 people during his life. Whatever prescription he gave was always right. Without exception, every patient who tried his medicine was cured. But Cayce himself was not able to explain it. He could only say that whenever he closed his eyes to look for some treatment, both his eyes turned upwards as if pulled towards the middle of his two eyebrows. His eyes became fixed there and he forgot everything. He only remembered that after a certain point he forgot everything about this life, and until that point, the treatment would not come to him. He suggested some wonderful remedies, two of which are worth understanding. The Rothschilds were a very rich family in America. A woman from that family had been sick for a long time and no treatment had helped. Then she was brought to Edgar Cayce, and in his unconscious state he suggested a medicine. We have to call this state unconscious, but those who know about this mysterious happening would say he was fully conscious at that time. In fact, unconsciousness continues until our knowledge reaches the third eye. Rothschild was a millionaire, so he could afford to search the whole of America for that medicine, but he couldn't find it. No one could even say whether such a medicine existed. Advertisements were placed in international newspapers requesting information about the medicine. After almost 3 weeks, a man from Sweden wrote, saying that there was no medicine of that name in existence. Although 20 years earlier his father had patented a medicine of that name but never had it manufactured. He wrote that his father had died, but he could send the formula. The medicine was then made up and given to the woman, who then recovered. How could Cayce have known of a drug that had not even been available on the market? In another incident, he again suggested a particular medicine to someone. A search was made for it, but it could not be found. A year later, an advertisement appeared in a newspaper announcing the availability of that medicine. For that previous year, it had been being tested in the laboratories. It had not even been given a name, but Cayce knew of it. The medicine was given to the patient, who soon recovered. Cayce had suggested medicines which could not be found, and so the patients died. When he was told about this, he said that he was helpless. There was nothing he could do. He said, "I do not know who is seeing the patient and is speaking when I am unconscious. I have no relationship with that person." But one thing was certain: whenever he was speaking in that state, his eyes were drawn upwards. When we are in deep sleep, then our eyes are drawn upwards in proportion to the depth of sleep. Now, psychologists are doing much experimentation on sleep. The deeper you are in sleep, the higher are your eyes. The lower the eyes, the greater is their movement. If your eyes are moving very rapidly under their eyelids, you are having a very eventful dream. Now, this has been scientifically proved through experiments that rapid eye movement, REM, indicates a fast-moving dream. The lower the eyes, the greater the REM. As the eyes go higher, the REM is reduced. When the REM is 0, sleep is at its deepest. Then the eyes remain steady between the two eyebrows.
Yoga says that in deep sleep we reach the same state that we reach in samadhi. The place where the eyes become fixed is the same in deep sleep and in samadhi.
I have told you about these two historical events only to indicate that between your two eyebrows there is a point where this worldly life ceases and the life of the other world begins. That point is a door. On this side of the door this world flourishes, and inside it there is an unknown world, supernatural. The tilak, the vermilion mark, was first devised as an indication and symbol of that unknown world. It cannot be applied just anywhere, and only a person who can place his hand on the forehead and find the spot can tell you where to apply the tilak. There is no use in putting the tilak just anywhere, because the spot is not in exactly the same place on everyone. The third eye is not found in the same place on everyone. It is somewhere above the middle of the two eyebrows on most people. If someone has meditated for a long time in his past lives and has had a small experience of samadhi, his third eye will be lower down. If no meditation has been done, that place is higher up on the forehead. From the position of that spot, it can be determined what the state of your meditation was in your past life. It will indicate whether any state of samadhi happened to you in your past life. If it happened often, the spot would have come down lower. It would be at the same level as your eyes. It can't go lower than that. If that spot has come in line with your eyes, then with just a small push one can enter samadhi. In fact, the push can be irrelevant. So, many times when someone goes into samadhi without any apparent cause, we are surprised. There is a story about a Zen nun. She was returning with a pot of water on her head after fetching water from a well. The pot somehow fell, and in that falling the woman achieved samadhi, became enlightened. The incident seems so insignificant. The pot falls and breaks and samadhi happens. There seems to be no logical connection. There is another such event, this one in the life of Lao Tzu. He was sitting under a tree during autumn and the dry leaves of the tree were falling. Watching them, Lao Tzu became enlightened. There is no relationship between enlightenment and leaves falling. But such things happen when, because of work done in past lives, your spiritual journey is almost completed and the third eye spot has moved down so that it is between your two eyes. Then any small happening will tip the scales, and that final small happening can be anything. If the sandal paste mark or tilak is put just at the right spot, it indicates several things. Firstly, if your master has told you to put a tilak on a particular spot, you will begin to experience something there. You may not have thought about this, but if you sit with closed eyes and someone puts his finger on the spot between your two eyes, you will have the feeling that someone is pointing his finger at you. This is the experience of the third eye. If the tilak is the same size as your third eye and it is put at just the right spot, you will remember that spot for 24 hours and forget the rest of the body. This remembering will make you more aware of the tilak and less of your body. Then a moment comes when nothing else is remembered about the body except that tilak. When that happens, you will be able to open your third eye. In this practice, connected with the tilak, in which you forget the body and just remember the tilak, your whole consciousness crystallizes and becomes focused on the third eye. It is just like focusing the rays of the sun on a piece of paper with the help of a lens. You create enough heat to burn the paper. When those sun rays are concentrated, fire is produced. When consciousness remains spread all over the whole body, it is just doing the work of carrying on your life. But when it becomes totally focused on the third eye, the barrier to seeing with the third eye is burnt, and the door which allows you to see the inner sky is opened. So the first use of the tilak is to show you the right spot on the body so that you remember it 24 hours a day. Another use of the tilak is to make it easier for the master to see the spot without having to put his hand on your forehead to see your progress, because as the place moves downwards, you will put the tilak a little lower. Each day you have to feel the spot and move the tilak to it, to where you feel the presence of the third eye. The master may have thousands of disciples. While the disciple bows down to him, the master observes where his tilak is and does not need to ask anything about his progress. The tilak indicates whether the disciple is making progress or whether he is obstructed by something and has become stuck. If the disciple can't feel the downward movement of the spot, it means that his consciousness is not being totally focused. If the disciple has put the tilak on the wrong place, it means he is not conscious of the exact point. As the spot goes on moving downwards, the methods of meditation will have to be changed. So for the master, the tilak functions just like a patient's progress chart in a hospital does for a doctor. The nurse goes on recording the temperature, blood pressure, pulse, and so on. The doctor just has to see the chart to know the patient's condition. Similarly, the tilak was a great experiment to indicate the condition of the disciple. The master had no need to ask anything. The master knew what help was needed or what needed to be changed. This was the value of the tilak, judging the changes needed in meditation. Another aspect of the third eye is that it is the center of willpower. In yoga it is called the Ajna chakra. We call it that because whatsoever discipline we have in our life is governed by it. Whatever order and harmony there is in our life arises from this point. Let us understand it this way: all of us have a sex center, and it is easier to understand. Through the sex center, because we are all aware of it, we are not very aware of the Ajna chakra. All our desires in life are born in the sex center. As long as the sex center is not activated, there is no sexual desire. However, every child is born with the capacity for sex and the entire mechanism for fulfilling sexual desire. It is a strange fact that women are born with all the ova they could need for the entire length of their reproductive life. Not a single new ovum can be produced later. From the first day of her life, the number of ova a woman has indicates the potential number of children she can give birth to. After she reaches puberty, every month one ovum will be released from her ovaries. If it meets and unites with a sperm from a man's semen, a child is conceived. Then no more ova are released as long as that embryo develops and until after the newborn child is a few months old. The desire for sex, however, does not arise until the sex center becomes active. As long as that center is inactive, even though the necessary equipment for sex is complete in the body, sexual desire is not aroused. When one reaches the age of 13 or 14, that center becomes active. We know this center because we are not activating it, but it becomes activated by nature. If the situation were otherwise, very few people would become aware of it. Have you ever wondered that if just a thought of sex passes through your mind, the whole reproductive system becomes active? The thought arises in the mind far away from the sex center, but the thought activates the sex center immediately. Every idea or thought about sex is sucked by the sex center towards it. Every thought is attracted towards its relative center, just as water flows to a lower level. The third eye center is the center of willpower. Let us understand what its function is. People whose Ajna chakra is not activated in this life will remain slaves in thousands of ways. Without this center, there is no freedom. We know about political and economic freedom, but these freedoms are not real because a person who has no willpower, whose Ajna chakra is not activated, will always remain a slave in one way or another. He may become free from one slavery, but will become a slave to something else. He does not have a center of will to make him an owner of anything. He does not have anything like will. He does not have the power to command himself. His body and senses command him. If his stomach says it is hungry, he is hungry. If his body says it is sick, he becomes sick. If his sex center says he needs sex, the sexual desire arises. If his body says it has become old, he becomes old. The body commands and he obeys. But as soon as this center of willpower becomes active, the body stops giving orders and instead it starts to obey. The whole arrangement is reversed. If such a person asks his blood to stop flowing, it will. If he asks his heart to stop beating, it will. He can ask his pulse to stop throbbing and it will. Such a person becomes the master of his body, mind, and senses. But without the activation of the Ajna chakra, he cannot be. The more you remember this center, the more you become the master of yourself. Many experiments have been done in yoga to awaken this center. If a person tries to remember this center every now and then, there will be great results. If a tilak is put there, your attention is drawn there repeatedly. As soon as the tilak is put on, the spot becomes set apart from the rest of your body. That spot is very sensitive, and if the tilak is on the right spot, you will have to remember it. It is possibly the most sensitive spot in the body. There are methods for marking this sensitive spot. After hundreds of experiments, sandalwood paste was chosen. There is a sort of resonance between sandalwood paste and the sensitivity of the Ajna chakra, and if applied on that spot, the paste deepens its sensitivity. Not just any substance can be used. Some other substances, in fact, can badly damage the sensitivity of that spot. For example, women stick a plastic colored on their forehead, but TILAKs from the marketplace do not have any scientific basis. They have nothing to do with yoga, and they cause harm to the sensitivity of the third eye. The question is whether a substance increases the sensitivity of the spot or decreases it. If it increases the sensitivity, it is good, otherwise, it is harmful. In this world, even a small thing can make a difference. Everything has its own separate effect. Keeping this in mind, some special things were found to be useful. If the Ajna chakra can become sensitive and be activated, it will bring about an increased integrity and dignity in you. You will begin to be more integrated, whole. Everything inside you ceases to be separate and divided, and you become whole. There is a small difference between the use of the TILAK and the TILAK. The TILAK was meant particularly for women. In women, the Ajna chakra is very weak. It has to be because the woman's entire personality is created for surrender. Her beauty is in surrender. If her Ajna chakra becomes powerful, then surrendering will be difficult. Her Ajna chakra is weak, very weak compared to a man's. That is why a woman always needs someone's help in one form or another. She does not ordinarily venture to stand on her own, but looks to a helping hand, someone's shoulder to lean on, someone to lead her. She likes someone to tell her to do something, and her willingness to follow makes her happy. India is the only country in which an attempt has been made to activate the woman's Ajna chakra. This is only because it was felt that unless the Ajna chakra is activated, the woman will not be able to make any progress in spiritual life. She cannot make any progress in meditative practices without willpower that has to be made stable and strong. But it is necessary to make her Ajna chakra strong in a different way, because if it is done in the usual way, the same way as for a man, it will reduce her femininity and she will begin to develop the qualities of a man.
So the TILAK was invariably and firmly associated with a woman's husband. This association was needed because if it was just applied independently, it would increase a woman's independence and make her self-sufficient.
And the more independent she became, the more her delicateness, her beauty and flexibility would be destroyed. There is a tenderness and softness in her seeking help from others, but if she became independent, she wouldn't be able to avoid become hard and rigid. So it was thought that to make her strong directly would damage her femininity, it would create problems in her being a mother, it would make it difficult for her to surrender. Hence an effort was made to connect her will with that of her husband. This was helpful in two ways. Her femininity would not be affected, but her will center would still become activated. Let us understand it this way: the Ajna chakra cannot go against the person who it is associated with. If it is connected with the will of a religious master, it cannot go against him. If it is connected with a woman's husband, she can never go against him either. If a TILAK is put on the right spot of a woman's forehead, with its deep association with her husband, she will be able to follow him, but she will be powerful against the rest of the world. If you understand what hypnotism is, you will be able to understand this associative phenomenon. If a hypnotist hypnotizes someone, then the person hypnotized will be able to hear only the voice of the hypnotist. He will hear the quiet command of the hypnotist, but he will not hear any loud noises that may be created by the spectators. This is similar to what happens when an Indian woman wears a TILAK. It makes her deeply suggestible. She remains open only to her husband and closed to everyone else. This happens only because of this TILAK. She will hear anything her husband may quietly say to her, but will not feel willing even to listen to anyone else's loud command. Her Ajna chakra is connected with her husband. This suggestibility, this mantra, is used in connection with the woman's TILAK. She will follow only him and surrender herself only to him. Towards the rest of the world she maintains her freedom and independence, but now there will be no problem for her femininity. Her womanhood can be preserved, her feminine qualities are left undisturbed. So as soon as the husband dies, the taika has to be removed because now she is not to follow anybody. People have no idea about the scientific approach regarding the taika. They think that because a woman has become a widow, the taika is removed. But there was a reason for removing it. Now she will have to live like any man for the rest of her life, and the more independent she becomes, the better it will be. Even the slightest area of vulnerability which might cause her to follow someone has to be closed. This taika experiment was very deep, but it has to be on the right spot and of the right material and put on correctly, otherwise it is absurd. If the taika is only decorative, it has no value. Then it is only a formality. So when the taika is applied for the first time, it is done with ceremony, with a fixed ritual. Only if it is done that way will it be beneficial and not otherwise. Now all these things have become meaningless because now the entire chain of scientific thinking behind them is lost. Now this is only an empty ritual, an outer hollow shell that we are still just carrying somehow, without any purpose, without any love. I will tell you a few more things about the Ajna chakra which will be useful. The line drawn upwards from the Ajna chakra divides the brain in two, right and left. The brain begins at that line and lies an inch deep. It has been observed that half our brain is not utilized. The most intelligent people among us are geniuses, also use barely half of the brain, and the remaining half is unused and undeveloped. Scientists and the psychologists are puzzled as to why this is so. Even if that half of the brain is surgically removed, everything continues to function normally. The person will not even know that half of his brain has been removed. But scientists know that nature does not create anything unnecessarily. There could be a mistake with one person's brain, but not with the brains of the whole of humanity. But in all humans, half of the brain is unused, inactive, without any movement whatsoever. Yoga maintains that this half of the brain becomes active only after the Ajna chakra is activated. Half of the brain is connected with the centers below the Ajna chakra, and the other half is connected with the centers above the Ajna chakra. When the centers below the Ajna chakra are working, the left side of the brain is utilized. When the centers above it begin to work, the right side of the brain is activated. As long as there is no experience of the activities of that other half, there can be no conception of it. In Sweden, a man fell from a train. When he was taken to the hospital, he began hearing the programs which were being broadcast on radio stations within a 10-mile radius around him. At first it was thought that there was some damage in his brain because he was describing the sound as just a humming in his ears. But after 2 weeks he began to hear the radio programs clearly, and he became very frightened and asked the doctor what was wrong. He told the doctor that he could hear the radio programs as clearly as if he had a radio receiver near his ears. The doctor asked him what he was hearing, and he repeated the line of a song. The doctor had just heard that particular song on the radio at his home where he had just come from. After that song, the radio transmission for that session had stopped and the doctor had left for the hospital. When transmission began again, a radio was brought into the hospital to compare what the patient heard with what was being transmitted. It was found that this man's ears were functioning like a radio receiver. Finally, he had to be operated on, otherwise he would have gone mad because there was no way to switch off the programs. He could hear the broadcasts all the time, whether he wanted to or not. This incident made one thing clear, that the ear has a great potential. It may be possible by the turn of this century to use our ears to listen to broadcasts directly. The ear can work like a radio receiver just by providing an on-off switch fixed near the ear. This idea only came because of this man having a train accident. In this world, many new inventions have been made, new ideas and perspectives have arisen accidentally. We could never have thought on the basis of our past knowledge that someday our ears might act as radio receivers. Both the ear and the radio receiver do the work of hearing. Both are receptive. In fact, the radio was made after the ear. The ear served as a model. The radio is meaningful only because of our ears. The other potentialities of the ears cannot be known unless we suddenly or accidentally stumble on them. A similar incident happened during the Second World War. A man was wounded and became unconscious. When he became conscious, he began to see stars in the sky during the daytime. Stars are always there, but because of the radiance of the sun, we are not able to see them during the day. They are very far away, and the sunlight intervenes. Stars are hundreds of times bigger than the sun, and they are hundreds of times brighter than the sun, but they are farther away from the earth than the sun. Sun rays take about 9 minutes to reach the earth, whereas the light from the nearest star takes 4 light years to reach the earth. The light from the sun travels at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. Even at this speed, sunlight takes 9 minutes to reach Earth, and light from the nearest star takes 4 light years. There are stars so far away that their light might take 4,000 years, 400,000 years, 40 million years, or 4 billion years to reach the Earth. Some scientists say that the light rays that began to travel from a distant star before the Earth was born may only reach here when the Earth has disappeared. Those light rays may never know that there was something like Earth that happened during their journey. The stars that wounded man saw exist during the day, but they cannot be seen. But that man saw them. What happened to his eyes? They developed some extraordinary capacity. That incident revealed the potential of the eyes. It indicated that there is dormant potential in our eyes of which we are not aware. All our senses have much dormant potential. Whatever seems like a miracle to us is only the sudden revelation of some of our ordinarily dormant potential.
It is not a miracle. There are many miracles within us, but they are not manifest. They are hidden behind locked doors.
Just a few minutes ago, I was telling you that half of the brain usually remains unused and becomes active only when the Ajna chakra becomes active. That is the insight of yoga. Such insights have not just come to light from recent experience, but have been known for at least 20,000 years. You cannot rely on any conclusion reached by science, because what science believes to be true today may be proved wrong within 6 months. But these insights of yoga are confirmed by the experience of at least 20,000 years. We have the illusion that ours is the first civilization, but many human civilizations happened earlier and have vanished. Many times before us, man reached the same or higher heights of scientific progress, but those civilizations were destroyed. In 1924, a Center for Research in Atomic Science was established in Germany. Suddenly one morning, a person who gave his name as Falconelli went to the institute and handed in a written message to the center authorities. In the letter he had written, "I and a few others know certain facts about atomic science, and on the basis of that knowledge, I warn you not to go ahead with your atomic research, because before our civilization, many others destroyed themselves through explosive atomic energy. It is better to stop any further research." Afterwards, efforts were made to find the writer, but without success. In 1940, there was a very great scientist in Germany, Heisenberg, who had worked developing atomic energy arrays. Again, the same person, Falconelli, came to his house, handed a note to his servant, and then went away. The note contained the same message, and again the author could not be traced. In 1945, when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, all 12 scientists who had helped to make the atomic bomb were sent a similar letter by Falconelli, telling them that even now it was not too late to stop further development of their work. Otherwise, since the first step towards destruction had been taken, the last step was not far off. Oppenheimer, who was the greatest American nuclear scientist and who had contributed a great deal towards the making of the atomic bomb, immediately resigned from the nuclear board after receiving this letter and issued a statement saying, "We did wrong." But once more this Falconelli could not be traced. What Falconelli was saying is very possible. Earlier civilizations did play with the atom and destroyed themselves. In India at the time of the Mahabharata war, the bow was used with atomic arrowheads, and a great destruction followed. This is the situation. A child becomes a young man and commits the same mistakes which his father committed. The father, who is now old, warns him not to in his own time. His father had also warned him, but in youth such mistakes are committed, and younger generations are warned by those who meanwhile have become old. Civilizations are also destroyed by taking the same steps and making mistakes similar to those of past civilizations. Civilizations, too, pass through childhood and youth and then become old and die. The insights of yoga have been gained over a period of 20,000 years. Historically, the calculations for a period of 20,000 years are fairly clear. If you want to study the youth of one man, you need to study that of 10, because what is true for one man may not be true for all men. The study of a single person and a single event are not conclusive enough by themselves. So that is why I said that the history of 12,000 years is fairly clear. Yoga has maintained for 20,000 years that if you want to know what there is beyond this worldly life, you have to activate that half of the brain which has been dormant and inactive. If you want to know anything about the absolute, that which is beyond matter, that other half of the brain will have to be activated. The door to that half of the brain is where we apply the tilak, the place of the Ajna chakra. That spot is the outward location, and it corresponds to the inner center, which is about 1.5 inches deep inside the forehead. That deep point, that center, gives an insight which is beyond the world of matter and of desire. Just as in India the tilak was devised, in Tibet they devised methods of actually surgically operating on that spot to reach the Ajna chakra. Tibetans have made a lot of effort to find the third eye, more than any other civilization. In fact, all of Tibet's sciences and understanding about life in its various aspects is based on the understanding of the third eye. Earlier I told you about Edgar Cayce, who gave prescriptions while in a trance. He was the only such case in America, but in Tibet, people would ask for medical advice only from those who were able to go into a trance, samadhi. Tibetans tried to reach the Ajna chakra surgically by breaking it open from the outside. But reaching that place surgically is quite different from reaching it internally through yoga practices, as has been done in India. Thank you all for watching today's exploration of the mysteries of the third eye. Through the stories of Srimavasa Ramanujan and Edgar Cayce, we've gained deeper insight into the power of this mysterious energy center. The third eye is not just myth or legend. It plays a crucial role in our lives and spiritual practice. By activating the third eye, we can enhance our wisdom and intuition, break free from the constraints of the material world, and reach a higher state of awareness. This world is filled with mysteries beyond what our physical eyes can see, and the third eye serves as a bridge connecting us to the deeper forces of the universe. Whether you already practice yoga or meditation or are new to these concepts, I hope today's discussion has offered you a more profound understanding of the third eye. If you're interested in learning how to activate your third eye, feel free to share your questions and thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content on spiritual exploration and self-awareness. See you next time as we continue to uncover the secrets hidden behind our world and search for the key to wisdom and awakening.